Hey internet, it's Phil and welcome to What a Wonder. So, a funny thing happened when I went to go see Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in the theater. Doomsday is turning to Batman, shooting a beam that would obliterate him, but something jumps in front of him, blocking it. The light fades, the only memorable superhero theme in the past 10 years kicks in, and we see Wonder Woman in full regalia on a movie screen for the first time in her 75-year history. And the theater went wild. An audience that had been passively watching the movie for 2 hours was cheering and clapping. Her very presence roused and inspired them in a way that Batman and Superman combined hadn't. Tears came to my eyes, and then I got mad. Like, actually livid. I looked around, seeing the packed theater having the most fun they have the entire movie, and I remembered all the things that I've been hearing about Wonder Woman for years, reasons that executives and decision makers have put forth about why she doesn't get movies, TV shows, or video games. If you're a Wonder Woman fan, you've probably heard one of these before. She's a tough nut to crack. She's tough to pull off. She's difficult to figure out. She's hard to market. She won't sell. And a dozen more variations of excuses for why she doesn't get the same treatment Batman and Superman do. Now, the truth is, Wonder Woman has a lot more resting on her shoulders than they do. There have been bad Batman and Superman movies. Some might even argue that there have been more bad ones than good ones. However, that's never extrapolated into a judgment on those characters, their viability, or even superheroes as a whole. But what happens when executives talk about doing a female superhero movie? Well, since Supergirl, Catwoman, and Elektra were all bad, they just objectively don't work. And not to belabor the point, but it's happened directly to Wonder Woman too. She had an animated movie in 2009, which by the way is really good, but that initially sold somewhat slowly. What was the response? Let's quote Bruce Timm. The execs decided because it wasn't able to sell quickly right away, whereas Justice League was, that there wouldn't be any more female superhero films right now. That's interesting, isn't it? Wonder Woman's movie sells slowly, though by the way it ended up in the top 10 for sales overall, and it's a signal that all female-led superhero movies are a no-go. So there's a lot of pressure to make a Wonder Woman project work, because its success or failure is going to be broadly applied to her entire gender. But here we are. Wonder Woman's mere presence in a film starring the two biggest superheroes in the world is lighting up the crowd, and I feel a mix of vindication, pride, and fury. You see, Wonder Woman is my favorite fictional character. She means a great deal to me, but being a Wonder Woman fan can be kind of rough. Despite being one of the 3 pillars of DC Comics, she seems to get a lot more tinkering and rebooting and retooling than a lot of other heroes, and it seems to often leave her in a kind of limbo. Now, when a character has been around for 75 years, being written by hundreds of different people, there are going to be a lot of different interpretations, and that's one of the coolest parts of comics and the various media that come from them. However, there is one interpretation of Wonder Woman I feel like I keep seeing over and over and over again. Wonder Woman's modern portrayals seem to really emphasize the mythical warrior part of her, like only that and nothing else, and taken to a violent extreme. She's scowling, brutal, bloodthirsty, and basically never smiles. Again, there's room for lots of different interpretations for any character, but I feel like I see this one way more often than any other, especially in any alternate reality stories or non-comics media. Obviously, being a warrior is a key part of Wonder Woman's appeal, but I think that this trait is emphasized so much that it makes the rest of her character kind of bland, or encourages writing that runs counter to the things that make her so cool to begin with. When writing her, a lot of people seem to make fighter her entire personality, and it ends up diluting her character. And after years of thinking about it, I have a theory as to why it's so popular. People are afraid that Wonder Woman won't be taken seriously. I think there's a real concern, and not always necessarily a conscious one, that unless Wonder Woman is constantly reminding us that she's a badass, we won't believe it. Now, she is a badass and she should show it off, but I think that a lot of writers are afraid to embrace her less outwardly powerful traits. What kills me about this is that I think there's a real desire to make Wonder Woman cool, but I think that this approach ignores what really makes her special. Compassion and love are at the core of Wonder Woman's character, and I think that there's this idea that she won't be convincing or empowering that way. The irony here is that this exact line of thinking is what led to Wonder Woman's creation in the first place. The thing that really gets me about calling her a tough nut to crack is that I honestly don't think she is. William Moulton Marston's vision of her, while absolutely of its time in some respects, is still really strong and compelling. Unfortunately, Marston passed away relatively early in his comics career, and at the time there just weren't many writers who believed in what Marston was doing as much as his huge audience did. Diana was turned into a much more typical female hero, and though later writers have brought her back on track, sometimes it feels like ever since DC has struggled to really focus her. That being said, I think that there are plenty of great Wonder Woman stories and interpretations from throughout 75 years to choose from when adapting her, but more often than not people try to reinvent the wheel. As an example, we have the 2011 TV pilot, which while well cast was doomed from the start because it just didn't seem to get what makes Wonder Woman different from say Supergirl. The tone of the show was just completely off, whereas that same approach is serving Supergirl really well right now because it fits her character. The ideas and elements that went into Wonder Woman's original conception have been watered down and sometimes forgotten over time, and I think that there's some value in examining that. I started reading the original run of Wonder Woman comics a few years ago, and it was eye-opening seeing what went into those early stories. In many ways, they were more radical and progressive than some being written today, and as we'll see, there's really a quality and an energy to them that I think she could use these days. days. In this series, we're going to look at the original Wonder Woman run and some of the elements that made it special so we can get a better idea of what her original characterization was. So let's go back to 1941 and see Wonder Woman's creation. Wonder Woman was birthed from the mind of William Moulton Marston, and though official accounts vary, it is certain he had a great deal of inspiration from Elizabeth Holloway and Olive Byrne. Marston was a psychologist and feminist who designed Wonder Woman to directly conflict the masculinity that defined basically every other hero in fiction at the time. Especially in the face of World War II, Wonder Woman was a rejection of what Marston saw as the male ego-fueled qualities that resulted in war. Artist Harry G. Peter was also connected to the suffragist movement, and so he was a perfect choice for a collaborator. In their story, the Amazons are created by Aphrodite in an age where women are slaves, bought and sold and given no value or rights. She creates them to be powerful but also to embody love, whereas the men of the time are aligned with Ares, thinking only of violence and the subjugation of others. Aphrodite gives Queen Hippolyta a magic girdle that will prevent the Amazons from being conquered. Ares is not a fan, so he sends Hercules to fight with them. After his army loses, he seduces Hippolyta, then steals the girdle and enslaves the Amazons. Aphrodite agrees to break their chains, but commands the Amazons to always wear their manacles so they may remember their entrapment at the hands of men, and as a sign of supplication to their goddess. The Amazons overthrow Hercules' army and leave man's world, founding Paradise Island, where they can create a new society in peace as well as being immortal as long as they remain there. One day, Aphrodite decides to grant life to a small statue Hippolyta has made, giving her a daughter who she names Diana. Diana is the joy of the Amazon, their strongest and brightest and bravest. When US pilot Steve Trevor crashes onto the island, she works tirelessly in her lab to perfect a healing ray that will cure him, while falling in love with him as well. Around this time, Ares is bragging to Aphrodite that World War II means he's basically in charge of everything, the royal in conflict making him the de facto ruler of the earth. Aphrodite's like, nah man, watch this, and tells Hippolyta it's time to step in. She is to send Trevor back to America with her greatest Amazon, who will remain there and help win the war against evil. Hippolyta holds a tournament to see who will win the honor, and she forbids Diana to enter, but she puts on a mask and does it anyway. She of course wins and gets to take Steve and her camouflaged warplane back to the US. She basically immediately starts fighting crime, and then gets her secret identity when she meets a nurse also named Diana, who looks just like her and wants to go be with her fiancé in South America. Diana becomes Diana Prince and gets to look after Steve, starting a long career of saving him from trouble. She also meets Etta Candy and the girls of Holiday College. We're gonna have a long talk about them in the next episode. Once Steve is out of the hospital, Diana gets a job as a secretary in the army, though she is trusted enough that she basically runs entire military operations on her own. With all the major pieces in place, Wonder Woman embarks on her adventures. There's a lot to unpack here. Much of it is probably familiar and a lot of it has come back from time to time in various forms. However, I want to discuss a few specific points from this iteration over the next few episodes. First, let's explore Wonder Woman herself. As I said before, it feels like the Wonder Woman most portrayed lately is angry, merciless, and callous. Essentially, she's Conan the Barbarian in nicer boots. Now, this approach to creating a character isn't bad. If you want to see an amazing example, check out Gail Simone's reboot of Red Sonja, which is in the actual Conan universe. And it has to be said that there have been great portrayals of Wonder Woman in this framework. I think there's absolutely value in an alternate reality Wonder Woman characterization that shows her as violent or authoritarian as a counterpoint to what she normally stands for. I would argue it's still a well that they go to a little too often, and most alternate reality Wonder Womans are basically the same, but it can be thematically interesting. However, it seems like these portrayals have bled out into mainstream Wonder Woman stories more and more over the years without real reflection on what they say about the character. I can only imagine what it felt like for a young girl or a young boy reading this comic in 1941, seeing a character that they couldn't have imagined existed, a character whose femininity wasn't a liability nor a shackle but plainly stated to be her strength. This is what makes Wonder Woman so unique to me. There was no character in fiction at this time that portrayed femininity as strong. She's not just a male action trope in a female body, and she's not strong despite being female but because of it. She takes the qualities associated with women that are normally seen as weak and subservient and makes them mighty and meaningful. This was entirely Marston's goal. He wasn't making a female hero for marketing or to appeal to men's desires. He truly believed in a hero that would empower girls and women and teach men and boys. It's smart to be strong, it's big to be generous, but it's sissified according to exclusively masculine rules to be tender, loving, affectionate, and alluring. Not even girls want to be girls as long as our feminine archetype lacks force, strength, power. By the way, if you're a fan of the magical girl genre of anime and manga, it works on the same principle. There's one major element of Wonder Woman's personality in Marston's stories that I think we've lost today that really hurts the most when I read the old books. You know what moment in Batman v Superman was my favorite? It's so quick you could easily miss it. Wonder Woman, in the heat of battle, having just been dealt a blow that would decimate most mortals, smiles and jumps back into battle. This never fails to give me chills. Even without a ton of screen time in this movie, in this one moment Gal Gadot deftly characterizes Wonder Woman. Marston's Wonder Woman loves being her. When she comes to man's world, she revels in racing cars and deflecting bullets. She quips at the feeble attempts of villains to best her and shows a genuine joy in being a superhero. There's an energy to Marston's writing and Peter's art that leaps electrically from the page. Marston's Wonder Woman is almost Spider-Man-like in her fun and frenetic manner. This honestly blew my mind when I first read it. There's an unbridled charm that pervades every inch of the comic and it is absolutely infectious. This is why I'm so disheartened that, like many other comic heroes, Wonder Woman is so serious these days. She's still great, but there's just something so inspiring about how Marston characterizes her. She manages to be an incredible warrior without constantly brooding. It's okay to let loose a little bit, and in fact I think it'd make her a lot more endearing. However, Wonder Woman's greatest trait, the thing that defines her to me, is compassion. Every hero cares about people, but Wonder Woman has an honest, true, unflinching love in her heart for others. She has a clear vision of right and wrong, but I think she's at her best when her empathy and understanding are brought to the forefront. Wonder Woman really truly believes in us, every one of us, though that doesn't mean she's going to let you hurt others. It's also worth remembering that Wonder Woman and the Amazons were all birthed from Aphrodite. She's the goddess of love, and that's what she designed them to represent. This, by the way, is why I really dislike when Zeus is made her father. I think it kind of dilutes that a little bit. This also defines her place in the Trinity with Batman and Superman. I think that at her best, Wonder Woman should be the moral center of the Justice League. She relates to people in a way the other two never will, and I think her perspective brings something different to the table. Having her be the violent one or the loose cannon just doesn't play to her strengths. Again, this is how I view the character, and everyone is going to have a different perspective based on what stories connect with them. And of course, times change and characters need to change with them, and there are a few characters who should reflect this more than Wonder Woman herself. The 1941 Wonder Woman was addressing specific issues of that time, just as the 70s Wonder Woman reflected women's lib, and the modern one should ideally reflect intersectionality. But I really feel that some of the elements of Marston's story and character that resonated so strongly with people have been lost or muddied, and would help make the modern Wonder Woman a little more well-defined as a character. There is, of course, so much more to talk about, from the supporting cast to the villains to her costume and equipment. We'll explore these as well as some of Wonder Woman's history after Marston's death in the next few episodes. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please hit the like button, let me know what you thought in the comments, hit the subscribe button to see when new videos come out, and I will see you soon.